Hello, welcome to another Random Code stream. Let's get right into it. I'm going to be continuing some work that I was starting on the last stream and see if I can actually get some real progress done on this one. So, yeah, I got this up here for my notes. Let's get some music going. So I got that going in the background. So, from the last stream, I learned a couple things. So again, just to reset, this is a source generator that creates a serialization implementation for a business object framework called CSLA. I've used it in the past. My friend Rocky basically is the one that has maintained it for decades, literally. And this, because I love source generators, I wanted to see if I could write a source generator for a custom serializer that you could plug in and hopefully get some good perf and memory gains by doing that. So that all has been working, but there's a part with the serializer and the way these objects are defined is that you have to serialize what's called their metastate. These are fields, among other things, that keep track of, has anything changed? Has it been saved? Is it considered new? Those types of stuff. And there's no easy way to do that in a consistent fashion. And so I put a request in to say, hey, could we get this metastate interface? Something that just lets an object say, what are some fields that they have to store and retrieve during serialization? So put that request in. Rocky actually implemented it, and the last time in the last stream, I thought the alpha version that I got had it in it, and it doesn't. It didn't. There's now a beta version out there that does, so we'll be able to actually use it. But what I also found out in the last stream is that CSLA has done a lot of work with nullable reference types, so that immediately caused some issues because my code wouldn't even compile. I have the warnings as errors turned up, and a lot of things were coming in saying, you know, this could be a possible null reference return. So I had to just address some things in code first to get that to work. Then something's happened with the release of .NET 10 with respect to NUnit on both this machine, my desktop, and my laptop. Hey, Nitro. And I wrote up an issue to talk about this. What I was seeing is I was getting this type initialization exception in this type that NUnit has. And it's with their runner. Well, somebody started to look at it a little bit more closely and realized that the problem might be with the type initializer for test assembly resolver, specifically this get.net install directory. And if you follow this, now why it needs this, I don't know. I don't know how NUnit works internally, but if you look at the stack trace that I have, it seems to be, this is where it's falling apart. And specifically with this key, because I have a 64-bit machine, they're going to look in this registry location for a path, which when I looked on my machine and on my laptop, I don't have. On my work laptop that I have not installed .NET 10 on, just .NET 9, I do. This exists. So why is that? I don't know. Now, why is this also going into the registry? That seems like a little fragile. Probably something you want to avoid. You know, there may be better ways to find where this is located. And again, why .NET or why NUnit needs this, I'm not sure. So I put this all in here, but I'm also a little impatient. You know, I'm kind of like, this should work, you know, and I'm not really sure why it's using the registry. Everything works on my machine. Like I can run .NET 10 apps. I can, Visual Studio 2026, which is not, they don't relate if you know what I mean by that. So, but it can build and run and execute .NET 10 apps. So it's not that. There's an issue with this. And so there's been something in the back of my head going on for a while, which is I really need to investigate TUnit. This is a relatively new testing framework that somebody created that works in .NET. It works with all the new testing platform bits and everything. That it's a very modern new testing framework that also does a lot with source generators, which caught my attention when I first heard about this a while ago. I was thinking, I should really just see what it's like to use this. And so I said, you know what, maybe this is my excuse to finally give it a try and see if I want to start falling in love with this, or at least like it enough that I want to make this my go-to for testing frameworks. And I spent time last night changing my CSLA generator project to using, which you won't really be able to see here, TUnit. Looks very much the same, right? I mean, there's not that much different, because when you reference, let's go to a different project here. All you do is just say TUnit, and it will actually do some global usings for you and other things, so that you can just, if you're using NUnit 2, it's a very easy transfer over. You can't use static classes, so I did have to change all my tests to sealed. The other thing, if there's one thing I don't like about TUnit, is that it forces things to be asynchronous, because their assertion syntax, again, is very similar to NUnit's constraint syntax, which I like. It's a little different in places, but overall it's very similar. But it's requiring you to await it, which means your method has to be async. But for, like you see their example here, a simple calculator add, that's all CPU bound. Why do you need an awaiter in that? I don't understand that. That's the one thing I think about TUnit that doesn't quite line up in my head. And that might be something I ask them, is like, why did you make the decision to make everything async by default, even things that are synchronous in nature? But be that as it may, they have numbers to show how their performance is. Is it somewhere here? I thought they had it right on the performance benchmarks. Yeah, I think I saw these somewhere. Well, okay, well that doesn't work. That don't work either. I did see somewhere last night though where they were showing the difference between TUnit and XUnit and NUnit and I think MS Test, but I, for some reason, can't find it right now. So, I can't tell if it's faster or not, but the thing is, it works. And in .NET 10, it just works. And I'm kind of also in favor of it because, it's exclusively for modern things. You have to be using the testing platform bits. You have to be in .NET. You've got to be in some more recent versions of things. And I like that. I like that it does that. So, and again, because I wrote Rocks, that's a mocking framework that uses source generators underneath the scenes. And so I have kind of a bias towards these things because of all the goodness that you get out of them. So, I changed all my tests from NUnit to TUnit last night, and they run. They don't all work, but that's a different issue because that's what I have to solve now with this, with nullable reference types and also now this new serialization thing. So there's two things I actually have to fix. One I didn't quite plan on, and the other one I did. So the first thing is actually, this one is also bugging me. I've seen this in the Insider version, and we're getting this error, and I don't know why. You know what? I'm just going to grab this And I'm going to address it later, because I think you can go up to here and say, there should be a way to say view feedback, right? Send feedback. Yeah, I'll do that later. Anyway, okay, so one of the things that we first have to do is when we read and write reference-based properties, like, so even if it's a string and it's not a nullable, what CSLA is doing now is returning this as a nullable string. I don't understand that. I mean, I guess I kind of do, because you can't say string question mark here. You have to say string. And what if the underlying property is a nullable string, a nullable reference type? So you can't assume that everybody wants it to be not null. I think that what they're defaulting to is we have to say it could be null coming out, and then you have to make the decision to handle it yourself, which is to do something like this. If you truly mean it should be non-nullable, if your property should be null, well, then you just pass in string, and then you'd assign it to what would be a non-null or nullable reference type, and then everything is fine. So I know that probably sounded like a mess of words, but we can't also here do the exclamation point. We could look at what the property is underneath the scenes, but we're not looking at least right now on the generator, we're not looking to see, is this managed backing field? That's what they call them in CSLA. Is it relating to a property on the object that is or is not nullable? We could do that, but I think the better thing to do is to put some generalized defensive logic around these calls. And so this is what I think I need to add, which is we already have the reader and writer extension classes, and what we need to add is one that is generic for both the writer and the reader. So on the writer, let's look at the writer first. On the writer, what we need is something that will take only reference types and say we're going to pass in something that's potentially null. If it's not null, now we're going to do, this is something that I already am doing in the serializer. What I'm going to do is add this serialization state value, it's a byte value, to say, yes, there is a value here, and the next thing is the value. Otherwise, it's null. And so then on the other side of the world, we're going to say, when we read, like we would here, when we read, we're going to first read a byte, cast it to the, and again, this is the way this whole serialization source generator thing works, is we know the precise order of things that are coming in and out. So we don't have to be as dynamic as the one that's in CSLA proper. And we just assume that what was written is what's coming out the other end. So we know we should see at this point, with the way the code's going to get generated, that we need to see, is it nullable or not? If there's actually a value, we'll call a reader. Otherwise, we'll return null. Now, the reader is going to actually call something on the binary reader. Okay. And so the way the code's being generated now is we know in this case that we should be reading a string. So we're going to pass that in as a func and say, go ahead and call that, and it should return the right non-null t value, which is what the binary reader would do. I may change this, but I think this is the way I want to go with it. So we just basically need to add two extension methods to binary reader and writer, put some tests around it to make sure that it works correctly, and then put that into the generated code. See if that's doing the right thing. And then we can finally get into using this metastate interface to fix stuff. So I've already spent 20 minutes babbling about it. Let's start doing stuff. Okay. So we want to go into here and go into extensions. I found you the other day. I'm loving the streams and don't even know C#. Well, thank you, Jam. I appreciate that. So one of the things I'm first going to do here is, yeah, we're going to the new C#14 extension route. And this is something that I've done in the past couple of years, which is new features that are in C# that I know exist, but I don't necessarily remember the syntax off the top of my head. They've done a really good job of adding refactorings in, for things like collection initializers, ranges, indexes, stuff like that. I'll usually just write the code. I've always done it, and then it will give me a little hint to go, hey, in Visual Studio, you probably may want to use this instead. And so this is the new extension everything. You can extend methods like you currently can. You can also extend static methods. You can add static extension methods. You can also add properties now and operators. They showed that yesterday. I didn't think that was going to make it in, but they're now doing properties. I'm sorry, operators, not properties. They are doing properties. They may do events and constructors in the future, but for now you can extend more. And it's with this new syntax. And there's some pretty interesting things you can do with this, but for now I'm just changing it over so that this doesn't change anything. Nothing in the code has changed at the end of the day. It's just using this new extension, syntax. So let's go into the writer first. And again, let's see if it picks up the right thing. And it does. Cool. Okay. So we need to go into the writer here. And I wrote the old syntax. Now we're going to want to change that because, we're going to have to. We're going to have to say it's not static. And it doesn't need this. Yeah. And so we called this the writer. Actually, I want to go back here. I want to call this. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Self. There. I don't know why I always put the literal sign there. You don't really need that. Why is it complaining? Oh, because we have to say byte. Even though the enumeration is a byte, you still have to cast it as such. And okay, now we should already have. Let's do the reader too. Let's just get that updated, and let's put in this extension method. And we don't need that anymore. We do need the constraint self. Oh, and then we need this to be self. There. Okay, so now that, well, it compiles, which is good. Compiling is a good thing. That's one thing that I've always said. Like, there's like a tips and tricks I could try to come together for, or guidance or things to always do. And this sounds silly, but it is true. Is anything that you commit to main or like a PR branch, it should compile. In fact, it must compile. If it doesn't even compile, go back to the drawing board and you miss something. Don't even bother me. Now, I'll make branches that, and you'll even see me do this in my streams. I'll make branches where I may commit code where half the tests don't pass, or the code doesn't even compile. Like right now, the integration tests don't compile because of the nullable reference type issues. So, but this is in a branch that I'm doing it in, and I'm okay with that. You know, as you're changing, because one of the nice things too about Git and using GitHub is the fact that it allows me to store progress and evolution of work. And so it's not just on my machine, I don't lose it. So I find that to be perfectly fine. Why did I push that over? It should have. There. Okay. So we've got all of our extensions now extensionized to the new way of doing things. What we want to do now is add tests. And if we don't have tests, we don't. And that's bad. We don't even have any tests around any of the stuff we do. We need to change that. So, like reading a byte array, and if I had Copilot, I actually don't have my own Copilot, GitHub Copilot account. I think being a Microsoft MVP, we might get an account. I have to look into that. I just haven't turned it on. I use it at work here and there, and I actually turned it off at the beginning of this year because it was so obtrusive and annoying. It still is, but I've turned it back on, hoping that some updates may have made it better, and it's starting to get better. You know, I'm trying to make it work so that it doesn't interrupt my flow, but that it can offer assistance in places to help when needed. And there's some things it's been doing lately for me that's been, that's kind of nice. That's kind of helpful. So, all right. So let's write some tests. And this is going to be a mind change for me because I'm used to making my classes static. No, stop this. I don't care about XUnit. Okay. All right, bring this in real loud. See, this is what it offers up to me. I don't even have XUnit referenced. Why does it default to this? I have gone on record that I'm not a fan of XUnit. It works. I'm okay with it, but okay, what do we want to do here first? Let's write a byte buffer. Byte array. Okay, but yeah, I've never been a fan of XUnit. It's not my jam. If I had to order the frameworks that I would prefer to use, and I've just started using TUnit, so I've not fully gone through and figured out what I like or don't like. But I would have to say it's NUnit with TUnit right either underneath it or next to it, and it may become my go-to choice in the very near future. I would only put MS Test below XUnit because I remember from years gone by what Microsoft did with testing in .NET and Visual Studio, and basically tried to kill off things like NUnit. And they're saying, oh, you want a testing framework? Here's Test Explorer. Here's this new framework called MS Test. You're welcome. And people are like, well, wait a minute. There's this thing called NUnit. Why can't we, how does that work with the new framework? We've given you MS Test and Test Explorer. You're welcome. And people got kind of upset about that. So, and then somebody created XUnit, which, at the time I think had some interesting things about it. It's just the conventions and opinions that it has, I don't agree with. And I don't like its terseness either. So, just a preference. Microsoft ASP.NET team decided to use it for other testing. Okay, fine. But then people said, oh, well, Microsoft is endorsing XUnit. That's the framework you should be using. No. I actually like NUnit syntax much better. So, yeah. Anyway, all right. So what do we want to do here? We need to write to a binary writer. So I always forget how to, yeah, thank you. Until whatever just worked there. That's exactly what I want to do. Except we want to capture the stream because we need to back it up for the test. Okay, and so now what we want to do here is say, we want to have a byte buffer which equals 22, 33, 44. Just something simple. Okay. And when we write it, oh yeah, it's exactly why I put this comment in here, because I even looked at this now and I'm like, why the hell did I do it this way? Well, it's because there are methods already that take the buffer, the length, and I needed to actually be able to store the length separately, but I couldn't just pass in a buffer to do that. And even looking at this now, I'm still not quite sure I did it that way, but whatever. That's what I want to do. So I want to say writer.write, and I want to put in buffer.length buffer. And that should... What's it complaining about? We need extensions brought in. So we need to say using. There, now it picks it up. Okay. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to say stream.position is equal to 0. And now using assert multiple, we want to say await assert that stream.read so you can read a byte. Because what I want to do is check the underlying stream. Does it have the things it needs? We could, in effect, round trip and do the reader methods here if we wanted to, but that's not quite what I want to do. Because like you see, the writer here also does some things with datetime offset. We need to be able to read those things out. So we know that an int is 4 bytes. So we could say var length is equal to new byte of 4, and then say stream.read. We want to pass in the length 0, 4. Okay. What's the problem here? Oh, yeah, because now it's picking up that the method is... Now what? Okay. As long as it gets what it wants, that's fine by me. Now we need to... We could do a string. We could do a span. So we could call this length buffer. And then we could have out var length. Blah, blah, blah. Await, assert that is true. Wait. Yeah, the syntax with... And now we should be able to say that length is equal to 3. Does that work? What's the problem? Argument of type, custom serialization, you're going to parameter customers. What? Argument of type custom serialization string cannot be used for parameter. Custom serializer of type read-only span and service collection extension add CSLA generators params due to differences in the nullability of reference types. What? What? This is a constructor. What the hell? That makes no sense at all. Whatever. Whatever. It failed. Why did it fail? Expected it to be true, but found 0. That's interesting. If you look at the stream, it has a length of 7. Here's your buffer. So you do see the 3 here, and you do see, so it did write correctly. Okay. So now what does length buffer have? It does have the 3. Or that doesn't work, huh? Why? That's interesting that that doesn't. Tries to convert a UTF character. Well, that's okay. That's not what I want. I want it to be... yeah, this is trying to basically, it's assuming it's like characters, and when you pass an array or span of bytes, it's saying UTF-8 characters. So, yeah, not quite what we want. I want to parse it, or I want to convert it. Convert to int 32. Can I give you just an array of things? I know there's a way to do this. I just don't remember. Damn. Hold on. To the searching. C# convert byte array to int. See, even somebody who's been doing this for like 30 years forgets this crap. So, Copilot search, come on. You gonna show me the right thing here? I don't care about little endian. Bit converter to int. Okay. Length buffer. What's the problem here? To int. Yeah. We need to change this. We need to get the var length is equal to this. And then we can assert that this is... Well, we don't need that anymore. That's the length. Perfect. Okay, now we want to also say here that we want to read the buffer itself. So we want to say buffer. What do I want to say here? Naming is hard. Read buffer is equal to new byte of 3. And then we want to read it as a memory of 3. And then we want to assert things. We want to assert that no, it's got to be this. Has count of 3. Oh, we don't need the assertion extensions. I don't want that popping up. Await assert that read buffer of 0 is equal to buffer of 0. Actually, we want to say is equivalent. We don't have to do all that. There. Much better. Okay, so that's cool. So we've got one test written. I know if I had Copilot running, I could say, write me all the tests for this. So we want one for a char buffer. And we can do it simply by just doing something like A, B, C. Except it's not a byte, it's a char. Okay. I really hope that they sometimes get target type or like best type with collection expressions that you could say here var. And what it would decide to do is go, you probably want this to be an array. You know, and I get how hard this can be, because what happens if you start wanting to say, well, I meant this to be a list? Well, then you should initialize this as a list or define it as a list, you know. So we want to write the buffer, the length should still be this. We want to read a char. Whoops. Okay, fine. What doesn't I like about this? Oh. There is no read for a char array. There's just only for... Yeah, because a memory stream is literally just bytes. So you can write things to it with different types, but with the binary writer, and the binary reader could handle it, but the underlying memory stream underneath all the crap is literally just is bytes. So when we're trying to read this out, we can do that, but this will fail because it's not a comparison anymore. Yeah. So what we want to do here now is we got to break it out. We got to say, await, assert that read buffer has count equal to 3, and then we want to assert that read buffer of 0. Cast as a char is equal to buffer of 0. And then we can do that for the other ones here, the 1 and the 2. 1 and the 2, run this. And that passes. Cool. All right. No, I want to save the file. Okay, now we can do a datetime. So we can write a datetime. Wait, no. There. No. Stop it. Var values equal to date time UTC now. And so we can say we want to write the value. We move the position. Now, what is a tix? Tix is a long. Long is 8 bytes. So we want to read 8. And so we're going to read 8 here. Can we say to int 64? Yes. It's kind of weird if I'm looking at this that... Oh, never mind. Okay, that's looking at the length. So now we can get rid of this code. And we want to say that this is called tix, because that's what we should have written. And that tix is equal to the value.tix. Boom. Okay, that's done. I mean, I'm not even going to get into the whole CSLA stuff, but this stuff is important. Again, you got to have these things in place. And I should have done this in the first place. Right, datetime offset. Offset. Okay. And so now what do we want to read out of this? We're going to read a long and a long. So we're going to read the ticks and the offset ticks. And then we need to do the same thing here. And then we say that offset ticks is equal to ticks dot, no, offset ticks. And it passed. Okay. What's another one? We got decimal, GUID, and time span. Okay. I was watching some of the .NET Conf streams this week, and I won't have time to get through all of it. I just don't have the time. But oh, I can't. Duh. That's a decimal. Okay. And so what we should be able to do here is say value bits is equal value bits with decimal get bits of the value. Okay. So now what we want to read is the buffer, and that should be the same as value bits dot length. Well, no. Times 4, because we're reading the ints out. So we want to read now to the buffer dot length. We don't need to convert. What we want to say now is await that the buffer is equivalent to the value bits. Yeah, it failed. Expected buffer but property 0 did not match. Expected 34, received 34. Looks like it matches to me. Oh, I see what the problem is. Okay. Because this is coming out as an int. So we want this to also... I was not... Well, shoot. We have to read it out this way, but it's true. We can't compare these because this is ints, this is bytes, and that doesn't work. What we can do, we can say first that the buffer dot length how do we want to assert that these are what we think they should be? Can we say bit converter? Yeah. How are we doing it in the reader? Oh, we just, because there's a reader for that, we don't have to worry about that. We basically want to say is the value and value bits equal to these 4 bytes and these 4 bytes. That's what we want to do. We could say something like this. We could say for var I is equal to 0, I is less than value bits length I plus plus. And then we say await assert that, and I gotta stop soon. We assert that bit converter to int 32, and we want our buffer as span, except we want to say the start is going to be I times 4 I plus 4 is equal to value bits at I. I think that's correct. Because let's say we had 4 of them. So we should see 16 value. We should see 16 values in the bytes. So we go through the value bits. So we go through it 4 times. The first time will be 0. So we're going to span over 0 to 4. This should be exclusive, right? Well, it's the length. So yeah. So we're always going to, sorry, the length is actually going to always be 4. Here we go to 0. So it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3. Here will be 4. I think this is correct. Hopefully this is correct. And it is. Okay. How many more do I have? I got decimal, datetime. I did those. Decimal. I got GUID, time span, and then the one I'm trying to get to. Unfortunately, I do need to stop. So let's put this in. 14 started writing. Add it. Generic methods for reader and writer for NRTs. Started writing tests for the binary reader and binary writer extensions. Okay, so we're not done with this, but we did get progress on it. I'm hoping to do another coding stream Saturday morning, so I'll continue working on this. What I might do is at least get the tests around both the reader and the writer done off screen. And just because that's kind of busy work, and just get that done. And then what I can do is then in the next stream say, okay, now we've got this reader and writer that's defensive for reference types. And let's put some tests around that. We'll have tests around that. Now let's actually include that into the source generator to say, if I manage backing field, the reader, the read, load, whatever those methods are, if they're reference types, just make sure you're using the read that's generic, because it should then default to this. So I'll do that next time. So that'll be sometime probably Saturday morning. So I want to thank everybody who stopped by, either now or in the future. If you haven't subscribed to the channel just yet, please do so. I would greatly appreciate it. If you've already subscribed, I appreciate you doing it. Again, coding stream will be Saturday morning. I will also be doing a Silksong stream today around 4:30 p.m.-ish, and also Saturday afternoon. But Sunday, I get on a plane, hopefully if my flight isn't canceled. That's a thing these days. My flight isn't canceled, and I'll be heading down to Orlando for VS Live Orlando. So that's on the docket. But with that, I'm getting to stream. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.